Today, my guest is Professor Mike Peng. I will keep my introduction short to maximize our time with him. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Mike as a person, Professor Peng as a thought leader and an esteemed scholar, and finally as a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I will skip many of his accomplishments and give you a very quick snapshot. Mike is a fellow of the AIB, editor-in-chief emeritus of consulting and consulting editor of Asia Pacific Journal of Management, and they actually named their best paper award as Mike Peng Best Paper Award. Mike received an NSF Career Award. He is one of the world's most influential scientific minds compiled by Thomson Reuters. Is ranked among the top 1% most cited researchers worldwide, among the 70 top scholars in business and economics based on citation impact. Moreover, he recently received the 2015 Decade Best Paper Award in JIBS, 2014 Best Impact Award in Academy of Management Perspectives, Best Paper Award from the US Small Business Administration, Distinguished Scholar Award from Southwestern Academy of Management, and the Scholarly Contribution Award from the International Association for Chinese Management Research. Without further ado, here's Mike Peng. Thank you, Mike, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks, Yogas, for doing this.
First question always is, what did you want to become when you were a child?
When I was a child, 5 or 6 years old, I actually wanted to join the military. Having watched too many war movies, I thought being an officer or a soldier would be very cool.
And can you pinpoint the earliest moment of distinction between domestic versus international?
I have to say it was in the year 1979. At that time, I was about 11. I was born and raised in Shanghai. So 1979, I would argue, was a historical year because I was watching on TV 3 American multinationals commercials. I still remember what they are. Number 1 was Coca-Cola. Number 2 was Marlboro, the cigarette company. Number 3 was Peng, the orange concentrate producer. So I thought these commercials were so cool. And you got to realize, I said these were historical moments because China was just opening up. These were not only the first ever American commercials ever aired on Chinese TV. These were probably among the very first commercials of any nationality, Chinese ones or foreign ones, ever aired on Chinese TV. So I just thought the companies, the products, and the very commercials that they showed us were just fascinating. For example, Marlboro, now no longer allowed to do such advertising on TV, right? The Marlboro commercials were about Western cowboys. The background was this very exotic land with tall cliffs in red color. I thought they took some special effect to shoot the commercials, but no, I realized more recently, they shot those commercials in Monument Valley. I actually went to visit Monument Valley about 4 years ago. So finally I said, that was where the Marlboro commercials were shot. And it took me a lifetime to discover where they were shot. So they were in Monument Valley, a place highly recommended to all AIB members to go visit.
How did you make the switch to IB scholarship?
IB scholarship, very interesting. And then in 1986, I went to the university. So I was studying, didn't really study IB, but it was called foreign trade. So I was training to become an IB practitioner. And China was just opening up. The country was desperately in need of IB professionals. So in a way, from my undergraduate roots, I never left IB. But the question is, how did I become an IB scholar? Becoming a scholar, that decision, I made that decision after I came to the United States in 1989 as an undergraduate transfer student. I figured, looking back, actually my mom was a professor. My grandfather on my dad's side was also a professor. So this was always in my family blood, but my parents didn't really push me to choose this career. I actually made this decision independently. Then I told my mom and dad, of course, they were very happy. So I am now the third generation professor in my household. As a side note, I'm hoping one of my kids, I have two, one of my kids will become a fourth generation professor.
Hopefully.
They grow up.
So something that is not on your CV, something not many people know about you.
This has to be my interest and hobby in history. When graduating from high school, I was seriously debating if I wanted to major in history. Long story short, I didn't major in history, but I still maintained this long and enduring interest in history, especially military history. Remember my childhood ambition to join the military. Especially in IB teaching, when talking about competitive dynamics, competition, global rivalry, I could actually draw on some of the experiences and examples from history. And my students generally enjoy those historical experiences and examples, which they normally don't get from a typical MBA course, for example.
True. If you stop doing what you're doing today and switch to a different trajectory for career path, what would it be?
Well, that has to be a historian. I would enjoy becoming a professor of history, I think.
Okay. Now let's talk about regrets. And what is one thing that you wish you would have done that you didn't?
One thing I wish I could have done, but I didn't. This has to be to foster a habit of going to bed early and on time every day. I don't mind confessing to you and now to the IB audience. I still struggle with this almost every day. To me, going to bed early would be to go to bed before midnight. However, I always found after midnight, the world is quieter. There's lots more that I could do. So I kept going. So yeah, this is actually a regret that that's pretty bad, but it's true. I'm just being truthful.
And what are you most proud of?
Most proud of inside academia has to be the development of the institution-based view. My colleagues and I have done a series of work, not only developing the institution-based view of international business strategy, but also we've done work in the area of the institution-based view of corporate governance, of corporate diversification, of entrepreneurship, of family firms, and of knowledge management and IPR. So I would suggest that now the institution-based view is becoming a paradigm. A paradigm is a family of theories, plural form, not just one single view or single theory. So that is a very nice accomplishment for which I'm very proud. Another one is really from a, how do I say, process or teaching perspective. I'm very proud to become a popular IB textbook author. I'm happy to report that faculty and students in over 40, now perhaps 50 countries are using at least one of my books. I have 3, Global Strategy, Global Business, and the paperback Global. So in my own personal teaching, the moment that always warms my heart is the moment that my students stand up in their final presentation or in their intermediate presentation would use the exact wording that I have coined, I have advocated for the field, the institution-based view, out of the mouths of undergraduate or MBA students. I think that is a very gratifying moment for which I'm very proud.
Now, let's talk about research. Let's talk about research, but for people who are not in the field, talk about how would you describe your research to laymen? So imagine you're stranded in a small village. You're basically going to a neighborhood pub. Locals are curious about you, what you do for a living. You're supposed to tell them what your research is about. What do you tell them, and why is this important?
a quick introduction to a few people in the pub. All right. I'll just say, I'll just be very brief. I'll say, look, worldwide, many companies succeed, many companies fail, right? And in this awful pandemic, if we ever go out to join a pub, right? So lots of businesses go under, but some companies rise to the challenge, and some companies even do better. Look at this pub, right? People actually come to enjoy themselves and enjoy the atmosphere. So there's got to be some secret behind this company success and company failure. So worldwide, what is behind company success and company failure? That is the central question around which I'm organizing my research. I am by trade professor in a business school. I do teaching and conduct research. My primary focus is that big question, what determines the success and failure of companies around the world under different circumstances.
Thank you. So from your window, how did the culture of IB scholars evolve over time? And is this a fruitful evolution? What did we gain along the path? What did we lose? How do you see the field of IB evolving?
I'll tell you, I'll try to trace back to my first year as an AIB member. The year was 1992. I became a PhD student at the University of Washington in Seattle in 1991, in the fall of 1991. So I immediately paid for my membership. So starting 1992, that was my first full year as an AIB member. So looking back for the last 28 years, I would argue we become more global, more diverse, and more inclusive. More global is reflected in the IB research coverage. As you can imagine, in the 1990s, when I joined the AIB, I was diving into the pages of JIPS, right? So pages of JIPS and other IB journals, they are full of articles about multinationals from, United States, Canada, Western Europe, plus Japan. Japan was the hottest new country to be studied by IB scholars, but really it was the world of triad, the three developed regions. But now you open up the pages of JIPS and other IB journals, you are seeing not only the companies from triad are represented, but also companies from many different parts of the world, such as Brazil, Russia, India, China, Turkey, Mexico, so on and so forth, are being intensively studied, dissected, and analyzed with scholars who have the interest in many different parts of the world. And that is what I mean by being more global, more geographically diverse in our coverage. AIB is becoming AGB, Academy of Global Business, I would argue. The other thing is, you ask about the changes, right? So the other thing is, I would argue, more diverse and more inclusive. We are incorporating colleagues from many different parts of the world. And they've not only brought in the scholarly diversity in terms of the research topics, but they also bring in their backgrounds and their personal interests and preferences. I mean, frankly speaking, in 1992, when I joined the AIB, I would be very surprised to find an AIB fellow who looks like, for example, me. And I think this is, I'm not the only person of Asian descent who is now on the AIB Fellows list. I mean, there are a number of scholars, and being more inclusive, more diverse. When you join the program, the PhD program at Ohio State, together with Ashley, right, your dear wife, that was 2000. I think you and Ashley would represent another wave of the social movement, making AIB more diverse. So it's gratifying to be contacted by you. You said you wanted to interview me on behalf of AIB, and I think it is, AIB is becoming more diverse and more inclusive, and I really appreciate the contributions you are making toward the bigger goals that AIB hopes to accomplish.
Thank you. About IB research, this question has two parts. One is what are the few omitted variables in IB research? And also, what have we overly studied that we should stop studying it now? Omitted variables and what is overly studied.
I see. So omitted variables, I would make a provocative statement by saying in IB, the omitted variable is B, the business part. We tend to emphasize the I, the international part. However, in my view, IB at the end of the day is about B. And what is B? B is business, right? If you look at a lot of IB textbooks, for example, they only focus on international companies, primarily multinational companies, MNCs or MNEs, right? And rightly so. However, they tend to ignore the existence of domestic businesses as if they don't exist, or if they did exist, they would just be sitting around waiting for their markets to be invaded. And of course, nothing is further from the truth. We know that domestic businesses, in terms of their numbers, vastly outnumbers the number of international multinational businesses, right? So if IB only captures the I part, at best, IB is only capturing one side of the coin, and the other side is the other side of the B, and that's domestic business. And I'm quite serious about this. And I would also suggest that IB is not the only field that is struggling with this problem. And next year in 2021, the Academy of Management will have its conference, and I already took a look at the conference theme. And I almost laughed at the theme, but I also smiled because the theme is to bring the manager back into management. And it's like a tongue twister. I have to say it one more time, to bring the manager back into management. So what does this mean? If the Academy of Management has not been focusing on managers, what has the Academy of Management have been doing all these years, right? So it is a wake-up call, I think. It is an embarrassment. It is also a paradox, but I think the theme was designed to be provocative and thought-provoking, right? So, so in that spirit, I would argue that IB needs to put that B back into IB. That is my comments about the missing variable part.
So, for example, in academic journals, then or in JIBS, the flagship journal, what is overly studied?
You have old topics and new topics. Actually, this is a great question, but I usually would say it in a politically correct way. That is, old topics would have anyone that is interested in old topics, sure, old topics can still be developed, but you have to realize you will face late mover disadvantages, right? And for new topics, think about artificial intelligence, for example, think about cybersecurity, right? New topics, you might enjoy first mover advantages. But that said, new topics in the eyes of reviewers will suffer from a lack of legitimacy. So reviewers tend to be conservative, and JIBS reviewers, including JIBS reviewers, I don't mean to point at JIBS reviewers per se. So if you do something truly new, you will have to also be prepared to deal with first mover disadvantages simply because the topics are so new. Are you doing a good job? So on and so forth. So in that regard, there are people doing very well cultivating old topics. Think about, I'll give you a company example, Amazon. In 1996, when Jeff Bezos started Amazon, what did he do? Selling books. Selling books is one of the oldest retail trades anyone can do, selling books, right? So what can he do? So he knew he would suffer from tremendous late mover disadvantages, but somehow he was able through Amazon to overcome these late mover disadvantages. Therefore, I would not discriminate against old topics. I mean, we all know what they are, but that does not mean there is no new entrepreneurial opportunities for some truly dedicated scholars to identify opportunities from from these old topics.
Great point. So I'm going to jump to the third part about advice and mentoring. What do you wish you would have done or known when you were starting out yourself?
When I started out as a PhD student and then as an assistant professor, I only thought I was working on one PhD. And then once I graduated, I would be practicing this one PhD, right? Now, after so many years, I would want to share with you and with the AIB audience that this realization that we are actually working on, if you were a student, or we are practicing, if you already have a degree, 3 PhDs at the same time. That is one stone killing 3 birds. And to me, that was a great realization, perhaps 10, 15 years into my career. And what do I mean? All right. So the first PhD, of course, we all knew what they are. That is your PhD in X. That is your major area, right? But the second PhD is really the PH part, the Doctor of Philosophy. That is, we as scholars, although every day we are so busy, right? We are snowed under by all these daily tasks and longer term research projects, so on and so forth. But I think we as individuals, as scholars, must devote some time, some attention, and we as a larger community also need to do that. Thinking about why we do things the way we do. Why, basically the question going back to your earlier one, why did we choose to be scholars, right? How do we make contributions to mankind through the kind of work that we do? And I came to this realization that we actually operate an academic Olympic model. Everybody, when we have Olympic Games, lots of people would watch Olympic Games, right? Regardless of your backgrounds or your political persuasion or your ideology. And why is this that Olympic Games were so popular worldwide? I think Olympic Games capture the human spirit in search of excellence. And we engage in the kind of scholarly competition, also in search of academic excellence. 10 years ago, I wrote a paper with my colleague, um, Greg Dess, in the Academy of Management, Learning, and Education, talking about this very idea that what is the nature of IB and management scholarship? And scholarship, in our view, is really to compete in scholarly Olympics. If we demand our students to be excellent, we need to demand ourselves to deliver the best excellent scholarship that we could. So that was the second PhD. The third one I want to share with you is really the idea that everything we are doing, from thinking of a research idea to delivering a message to our students, to, for example, giving this interview with you is about marketing. And in IB, I know we have colleagues who have PhDs in marketing, and some of them are marketing professors working in departments of marketing. That's great. They know everything about marketing. But I think the majority of AIB members probably don't have a degree in marketing. So we tend to ignore the aspect of marketing that permeates our entire work. And I would argue, we have to keep this marketing mentality. For that reason, for example, when we write papers, don't make the title too long, please. A long title is going to turn people off, right? And when we write articles, can we make the article length short? And when we write a slide for our teaching purposes or research presentations, I would always suggest that we want to reduce the number of words per slide so that we can actually do a better job communicating these ideas instead of reading off the slides. If every slide has too many words, then a lot of us have the tendency to read off from the slide word by word by word by word. And I don't think that's a good way to do marketing. So in summary, I think I realized that everything we are doing is about the 3 PhDs, not just one and not just two. Thinking about the major core areas of our work, but also don't forget about the philosophical aspect, and also the marketing aspect. And these are the three PhDs I want to remind all of us if we didn't know about them already.
In your experience, what do you commonly see as the top three big mistakes that the PhD students do at the beginning of their career?
PhD students, interesting. One of the idea that oh, I'm training to work for the highest degree, right? So it's I'll focus on the big idea. I'll focus on the wonderful data. Um, but I'm just a sloppy writer. I cannot handle details. My references must have errors. And you know what? In the end, I could hire an editor to clean out everything, imperfections. And I think this kind of attitude is inappropriate. Of course, we want to focus on the big ideas. We want to focus on the powerful software that can compute and crunch those numbers, right? But at the same time, I would argue attention to detail is a reflection of how rigorous you are as a scholar. That is why I would not, I would not demand perfect references. I would not demand every submitted article to have no typos, but I would tolerate a tiny small number of these imperfections. But I would call for action to pay attention to process issues. One leading process issue is writing skills. I've seen someone telling me, oh, just focus on research, focus on the thought process, focus on the theory, the writing will carry itself. Well, I'm sorry, I disagree. Writing requires continuous efforts. Writing requires conscientious efforts. Just reading JIPS articles and JIPS issues from cover to cover is not going to improve your writing skills. So I told my own PhD students, and I'd like to share this advice with the AIB audience as well. Go pick up a writing textbook, English composition textbook. Be humble. Go through some of the exercises and learn how to write a beautiful sentence, and then how to construct a readable paragraph. Eventually, can you think about how to write a big paper? We are training our students to write the big paper as if they already knew how to do it. Well, most of them don't. And this kind of serious training is not being provided by our programs and is not being taken very seriously by students. And I think we need to remind our students, we need to push our students, and we need to push ourselves to do that. And I think that is, I guess I already mentioned a couple of mistakes people have made, and I've told them to go back to the basics of writing.
Interesting. Crafting a paper, right? The topic is crafting a paper. For the sake of time, what is one question that I should have asked you but didn't?
About crafting papers or about anything?
About anything.
I'll just for for AIB scholars, for IB scholars as a community, how can we make a difference? Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Let me go back. The question is, I thought about this because a great question. That is, individually, we do our research better, we do our teaching better, we provide better services. That's all very nice. But what we can do as a community of like-minded scholars, that is ask. And my answer is something I want to share with you. I actually have a thought, have a suggestion. I would even say I have a dream. All right. So what is that dream? Let me share with you. The dream is about university education, how we can, as a community, make an impact. To go to every university, every student is required to take one English class, one math class, one history, one social science, one science, something like this, right? general education requirement, right? I would like to see every student who gets a university degree will be required to take one business class, regardless of your major, not just for business school majors. Every student in all majors ranging from anthropology to zoology. And why? Because when they graduate, most of them will go out to work for companies, right? So requiring them to take one class about business will help them do much better in this wonderful and scary world of the workplace. And further, instead of just an introduction to business class, my dream is to have this class to be an introduction to IB. Are you getting my dream? And nowadays, there's not very meaningful to talk about domestic business versus international business. So introduction to business has to be introduction to international business, has to be introduction to global business. And so my dream is to have every university making that requirement. And for us as IB scholars, we represent the business school. We go out to teach the intro to IB class as a service to our own major students, but also as a service to the larger university community. Every university president I have met, I would grab this person and tell him or her about my crazy idea here. But with me, myself, this is not going to be happening. So I would suggest to every AIB member, when we get a chance to talk to these decision makers, we make a case about how important our courses, our one course, Intro to IB, can help enhance the educational quality of not only business school students, but also of all university students. And that is really a big dream that I want to share with you. I hope it makes sense to you.
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure what the universities are going to say. It's about who's going to get the money, about tuition, who's going to run it, how is it going to be structured. Well, we'll see if ASESP does something about it, right? It eventually has to be a top-down approach. But there's clearly definitely a need to be aware of international business.
Aware of business in general, right? So,
yes. Yeah. Mike, thank you so much for your time, for this great and candid interview. I learned a lot. I'm sure others will agree with me. This was a very good and eye-opening interview. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure.